How's it going, guys? Matt here from the Toasty Bros, and I'm here with another AMD versus Intel build guide featuring YouTuber Blur. As always, link will be in the description. The PC Part Picker link will be down below. So without further ado, let's roll that intro. First, for the CPU, I chose the i5-6600K. This processor comes in at a total of $233.99. The i5 is a very solid CPU on the Intel platform. In gaming, this processor competes very closely to its bigger brother, the i7-6700K. The only place where it falls behind is in multi-threaded applications like Adobe Premiere Pro, Sony Vegas, Photoshop, all those editing softwares where the i7's hybrid threading really excels. Overall, the CPU works wonders for this build and will do the job for gaming. Next up is the CPU cooler. I went with the legendary Hyper 212 Evo. Not much to say there. The Hyper 212 Evo is a $34 cooler with a $10 mail-in rebate. Even though mail-in rebates are kind of weird and most people don't really go about doing them, I mean, I highly recommend doing it if you want to save that extra money, but $10 off, really cool. And it'll allow you to overclock that i5 to 4 GHz. No sweat at all, be really easy. My i7-2600K is at 4.4 GHz using the Hyper 212 Evo, so that's something you should keep in note. But yeah, the cooler will do awesome for this build. As for the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GA-Z170 ATX motherboard. This board supports overclocking and up to 64 gigs of RAM for all your video editing and Premiere Pro hungry needs. Very solid board coming in at $90. And with a very reputable brand like Gigabyte, it's going to do the job, it's going to withstand the tests of time. It looks very sleek and will do the job for this build. As for RAM, I opted for 8 gigs of Kingston HyperX Fury Black Edition RAM. Not much to say about that. It's DDR4 at 2133 MHz. You could opt for 16 gigs of RAM if you want, but really 8 gigs does the job. Most games are really still optimized for 8 gigs, but if you want to do more, the motherboard supports up to 64 gigs of RAM, so you have that option. So 8 gigs is a good staple amount to go with, and I highly recommend it for this build. As for storage, I went with this standard WD Blue 1TB hard drive for mass storage, mainly all your games, your big files, your backups. 1TB is pretty decent. You can go with 2TB if you want to. I just went with 1 because it's kind of a standard and it's very affordable at only like $42. And for the actual boot drive, I went with a 120GB Silicon Power S60 SSD. SSDs are awesome, especially in this price range. You should certainly opt for an SSD so you can have fast, snappy response and load times in whatever OS you install, whether Linux, Ubuntu, you're doing a Hackintosh, that sort of thing. SSDs are awesome for the actual OS. It also works very well for your most used programs like Premiere, Google Chrome, that sort of thing. Really awesome to have an SSD at this price range. Definitely a much recommended upgrade for your builds or whatever new build you're going to be doing. I managed to squeeze an MSI GTX 970 into this build. Now, regardless of the whole 3.5 GB VRAM controversy, this card still performs excellent at 1080p and even into 1440p. It actually performs really well at 1440p. You can see some benchmarks on YouTube, just Google it on up. All of the features, including with a GeForce card with shadow play for game capture and G-Sync, making an awesome and very compelling purchase at GPU. As for the case, I went with a basic Corsair 200R mid-tower case. Nothing special, it's just a black case, no side panel, none of that fancy-dancy stuff. It's affordable chassis. You can do whatever you want with the case, but for this budget, I had to sacrifice in some location. So basically, to make it work better, I had to cut back. So the case was the one thing I went for. I mean, I recommend you could pick something up from NZXT like the S340, really solid case, but you would go over the $900 budget, of course. It's not cheap by any means. It's just not the most glamorous case you can buy. So Corsair is a solid brand. This case is very solid, and I recommend that you pick it up for this build. And lastly, I went for my power supply. I went with a trusty Corsair CX 600 watt power supply. Corsair CX series is a budget series of power supplies, but will have no problem powering this build. It has enough juice for your overclocks and your total system draw. Overall, this system pulls in at a total wattage of about 351 watts at full load, which you really will not get anywhere near full load unless you're doing gaming or video rendering, and even then you'll have the headroom to do overclocking and maybe some expansion along the way. Not going to be able to do SLI with this, but I don't really recommend it for that sort of build. I always recommend selling your GPU and buying the next tier up, but that's for another video. Anyways, 970 with this power supply and the i5-6600K will do really well. Thanks again for watching this video, guys. Check out Blur's video right here or in the description. And thanks again to him for doing this series. Awesome dude with an awesome channel with awesome content. So check out his channel. And thanks again for watching this video. If you haven't already, please check out all our social media links and ways to support our channel. Really appreciate all the growth we're having, almost at 10K subscribers. Thank you all again for doing this for us. We're growing and reaching our dreams and aspirations with this channel. And thanks again, guys, and have a wonderful day. Peace out.